Welcome to Attention Retention with Jackie McManus, your source for the latest trends in transportation recruitment and retention.
It's the Tim Ridley Show.
6:36 on the Tim Ridley Show. Dan Ronan with you. Glad to have you along with us. And we welcome in from up in the great state of New York, Jackie McManus, the founder and CEO at KJ Media, talking about recruiting, engaging, and retaining folks in the trucking industry. Jackie, good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Dan, good morning. So great to be on the show with you again today.
Jackie, want to talk the next 25 minutes or so and chat with you about some of the challenges that the industry's facing with regards to recruiting. We are in a little bit of a freight recession. We've seen the numbers drop from where they were, comparatively speaking, to, let's say, a year or two ago when it was still pretty much go. What challenges does this make for those in the recruiting sector of the trucking industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely has been a softer freight market across the board, and there's a couple of things that are coming out of this, this part in the economy that we're in right now. And one of the biggest factors that we're seeing for clients and trucking companies that may not be, growing or acquiring, and just trying to maintain the fleet, they're really diving deep into how to retain their drivers right now. And figure out the best tools if they're not actively recruiting or they're just replacing staff that has, maybe left for some sort of reason, whether it's home time, pay, benefits, or if they're retired. So a lot of companies now we're finding is having a heavy focus on how can we not only recruit our drivers, but more importantly, how can we retain our drivers so that they are going to stay. And so it's actually, even during this sort of economy right now, it is exciting to see that carriers are having this heavy focus on how to retain their current workforce and figure out different tactics to keep them so that when we come back up in the economy and carriers are actively recruiting, they're going to have, a really good pool of candidates and a really good pool of employees that are already working for them. So it's kind of a trim the fat type model, if you will.
A couple months ago, we had the big LTL carrier Yellow go out of business and lost about 22,000 unionized jobs. Are we finding that those men and women who were driving LTL for Yellow are being integrated back into the system? Are we finding they're coming back in?
Yeah, actually, I just spoke to a client yesterday, and they were able to not only obtain some of their current employees from Yellow or the employees that were let go, they also obtained some of their freight. So that it is going to see how this shakes out in the market over the next year because it's only been a few months. But from my knowledge, some of those employees have been swooped up by other carriers, also any sort of like internal staff as well. So sales, directors, operations. They have had that experience and were able to go to other trucking companies.
Okay, so we're gradually seeing that if you want to stay in the business and you're interested in maintaining a career in trucking, that there's enough capacity where those folks are being integrated back in.
Sure is. Yeah, there definitely is enough capacity in that regards because, with the softer freight market, yes, there's some of our clients that aren't growing as quickly as they have in 2020, let's say, or 2021. But there is also a big portion of our trucking clients that are in the growth stage and they're acquiring businesses. They're more of the medium-sized trucking companies that are acquiring, let's say, the smaller trucking companies throughout the states. So they're in growth mode right now. And we're seeing that with, again, 50% of our clients in the growth mode. So with that, they need more labor. They need more staff. So I know one of my clients, specifically hyper-targeted through us, folks that, truck drivers that worked for Yellow.
Okay.
So they had a really good conversion rate, which was great to hear. they're a medium-sized business. They weren't nearly as big as Yellow by any means, but we have been finding that a lot of trucking companies, once they have a taste of those larger companies, they really want to work for more of a, family-oriented type business. And they have a better retention rate typically. So it's been good to see that transition. I'll be really excited to see how this shakes out because it is so new, and I'm sure a massive portion just took the furlough and took the unemployment at that point and probably taking some time off. But I'm curious to see how this will shake out in a year.
And those are good drivers. Those are good men and women. I mean, LTL is a tough sector of trucking to work.
Sure.
It's got a lot of challenges. So you've got drivers, men and women, back office folks, dispatchers. I mean, they're really battle tested in that particular sector of trucking.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Dan. It is one of the more difficult positions out there. So they go from, the LTL to, let's say, truckload or drop and hook. That's an easy sell for companies that are looking to tap into that workforce.
Jackie, every year I usually go to the Recruitment and Retention Conference. It's been in Nashville, Tennessee the last several years. But I go to that, and I heard last year, and I want to see if this is still the case, that if you're hearing this among your clients, that as we were starting to go into the freight recession back last year, third quarter, a lot of recruiters were saying, you know what, I'm going to keep pushing the recruitment. I'm going to keep working on this. I'm not going to back off, because if we back off in 24, second quarter, third quarter, whatever it is, whenever the economy starts to pick back up and we come out of this thing, that it's hard to crank it back up. It's hard to get it. It's hard to hire recruiters. It's hard to do all the things you need to do. It's better just to stay the course, maybe slow it a little bit, but don't shut it down. Don't start throwing recruiters and staff overboard.
I agree, and I've definitely seen that as well. I think out of all of our clients, maybe one or two clients, what they ended up doing was just reducing their overall advertising spend and their recruiter spend. But the general philosophy was, we don't want to turn off the faucet, right? We don't want to, and then all of a sudden when the economy picks back up, they're scrambling. And the companies that have been actively recruiting, are saying is always be recruiting. They're going to have a win in the marketplace. They're also at the same time going to have a database of candidates to work with. I know many of our clients are back ordered from getting their brand new 24 Peterbilts in, or their international trucks in. So once those start landing, they're really most of our clients are going to be in a good position to actively recruit out of the database that they've built over the last year, to market to them and tell them, hey, we got our brand new trucks in. Especially if they're getting orders at 10, 15, 20, 30 trucks. It's not sustainable if they haven't been actively positioning themselves. And also another big piece we're finding too is that drivers these days, and rightfully so, if they see an ad on, let's call it Facebook, for example, they may click on the ad, but they're going to go, more importantly, to the company's Facebook page. They're going to Google the company. They're going to do a lot of due diligence and research. So a lot of companies now, especially during the softer market, are really focusing on their brand reputation and how they are positioning themselves to drivers so that they can essentially show the drivers what their core values are, the inside and out, through their websites, through social media, and different platforms like that.
6:45 now on the Tim Ridley Show. Dan Ronan sitting in for Tim Ridley. Glad to have you along with us, coast to coast, here on Sirius XM, channel 146. We're going to continue our conversation with Jackie McManus, founder and CEO of KJ Media up in the New York City area. And she is one of the best when it comes to trucking and recruiting issues. We'll continue our conversation here on the Tim Ridley Show, Sirius XM 146. 6:47 on the Tim Ridley Show, 615-292-6366 in conversation with recruiter Jackie McManus, talking about ways that she believes the trucking industry should go about handling their business these days, as we are in a little bit of a freight recession. Jackie, of course, is on all of the various social media platforms, including LinkedIn. She is the founder and CEO at KJ Media up in the New York City area. Jackie, you've got on your LinkedIn page, you've got the Recruiting Retention Digest. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about what exactly that is.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about this, Dan. We launched this early August. And so essentially through the Recruiter and Retention Digest, it's an opportunity for trucking companies to subscribe to it. Every Wednesday morning, we put out a new newsletter. From my experience, whether it's, I started my career as a truck driver recruiter and kind of rose the ranks through a truck driver staffing agency. And then at 26, I decided to start KJ Media and have had the business now, fortunately, and got blessed for 10 years now. But it's a great opportunity for us to give free tips and tricks to trucking companies on what we're seeing in the current market, what's working, what's maybe not working, and for them to really dive deeper into how to recruit and retain their truck drivers. So it goes out every morning, every Wednesday morning, and it's a subscription based for free. So all trucking companies have to do is just subscribe, and they will get an alert once the newsletter is posted.
What is the most tenuous time after you've hired a new driver? What is it? Is it 30 days, 60 days? If you can keep them for that period of time, is that the most tenuous time, or is it maybe later on? Where is that? Because I've heard all sorts of different theories.
Yeah, it's depending on the company and what they have set up. From where we sit, the first 30 days are critical and the first 90 days. And really having a pulse on each and every driver that you bring through the door. There has historically been a disconnect, Dan, from when the driver gets recruited to and what they're being sold onto the position to their first load being dispatched. And so really it's about that first initial conversation between the recruiter and candidate being completely clear on what the position is. If the driver is not, for whatever reason, a good fit personality-wise, they may have all the credentials, our thoughts are don't fit a square peg in a round hole, right? Because they're going to leave. Make sure that your recruiters are having lengthy conversations to ensure that these drivers meet their needs. One of the issues, too, with, how great technology is now, it's a blessing and a curse because it's been so easy for drivers to apply to a position. If you think about Indeed or if you think about Facebook, it's a one-click app, and they're submitted to the recruiters team. So for us, what we set up for our clients is a pre-qualification, high-intent process that basically nurtures the driver after they submit their information to verify that they are the right fit for the company, not only by their qualifications, but also personality matching, so that a recruiter may have, if they went strictly through Indeed, and Indeed's a great company, we're partnered with them, but if they go strictly through Indeed, they may have 100 leads that come in. But through our system, we may only send through 35 to 40 because those are the ones that make it match. Now, what that does for the recruiters, it helps them have better conversations from the front end, so they're able to then retain that driver over the next 30 to 90 days, because that's really the critical point. We're seeing, too, a lot of companies are giving drivers a mentor, especially within the first 30 to 90 days. So if they're a newer driver that just came into the industry, or even if they've only been in the industry for about 2 years, there's a mentorship program outside of the relationship with dispatch. And that, too, we have seen a better retention rate. They essentially have a co-pilot to talk to about what's going really good that day and what's going not so great, and help mentor them and figure out the day-to-day life of working with that company.
Okay, so there are guardrails, there are mechanisms in place then to assure a smooth transition as best you can.
Yes, exactly. And so that's really been a big focus for a lot of clients during the freight recession, because when we come back up, and we will, the economy will come back. I just saw yesterday, Dan, that it's not till 2025 and my stomach dropped, but, we'll see. They keep pushing it back. There are guardrails in place, and I always recommend a mentor-mentorship type situation, especially from the get-go. There are some clients that keep it in place the entire lifespan of the driver being there, and then gives them the opportunity to be promoted to become a mentor themselves.
Okay. Do you find that sometimes it's a little thing like some sand in the shoe that gets in a driver's shoes and then becomes a bigger irritant and then a bigger irritant? Then finally, they may be saying, you promised me this and you didn't do this, and then there's bitterness and acrimony, and then maybe they leave.
Yeah, and you want to know the top reason why that happens? It's because of the lack of communication. It's just a lack of communication. We encourage carriers to over-communicate with new drivers coming in. And so we really find that if that is the scenario, it's typically because the recruiter was quick to bring them in because they had 15 open trucks and they need to fill them immediately. And they're pretty much rushed through the orientation process. And, the recruiter said one thing and they're being dispatched to do something else. It's going to leave a bad taste in that driver's mouth. So it's the earlier the communication, the more honest, the more transparent trucking companies can be right from that first phone call is actually critical. And actually, Dan, the newsletter I'm posting today is about the first 30 seconds on the phone with a recruiter. And it really maps out how important that conversation is from the get-go to ensure that there is honesty and transparency, and the driver knows exactly what they're getting into.
The first 30 seconds.
Yep.
Wow. That it doesn't surprise me, but I'm impressed that recruiters have sort of dialed it down to that granular of a level.
Yeah, and it really comes to not jamming the job down the throat. If the driver isn't a good match, really learning about what they're looking for, what's not working at their current trucking company. Is that something that they can provide at the new position that they are interviewing for? So really just making sure it's a cultural fit, which is the number one thing that the next generation is really looking for. Pay is pretty comparative across the board. They want to make sure, is this a good culture fit for what I want to do, and is this the company I want to work with?
You mentioned something a second ago, and I want to pick up on that, and that is a younger generation of drivers. Folks in my age demographic, we're starting to age out. We're starting to think about retirement or moving on to other things in our lives. Is there a significant difference? Because I'll talk to you about this. I have a son who's a trauma room nurse at a hospital in Dallas. I'm very proud of him. He works in an ER, and he's the bomb, man. I mean, I love this guy. But
I love it.
But he tells me, he says, when I leave the hospital parking lot and I go home to my wife and to my son, he said, I don't think about the job. He said, I don't think about the 12 hours I've just put on the floor, because it's a high stress environment. Is there a difference between those of my generation, the baby boom generation, and those that are younger in terms of how they approach their job, and especially as it relates to the trucking industry?
You know what is so interesting, Dan? I was just talking to a customer about this yesterday. 1,000%. We are technically in 5 generations of the workforce, from the baby boomers all the way down to the Gen Z. And it is a completely different situation for each generation. And I 1,000% agree that the younger generation very much has the thought process of a work-life balance. I'm on the older millennial side. I didn't really understand work-life balance. That's why I started a company at such a young age and it rose the ranks. So, but it is very much, kind of that Dolly Parton, that 9 to 5 is the overall thought process of that generation specifically. So they're able to turn off once they're off the job. I'm still not able to do that, to be honest. And I know a lot of my customers
I definitely have that problem, and anyone who knows me knows that I have that problem.
Yep. Yeah. I'm like vacation. I'm still on my emails and Slack, right? Like I don't know that. So, but that generation, when they're off, and I know I employ folks that are from that generation as well, they're off. And there's something that's really healthy about that, but it is a very big adjustment for companies across the board, regardless of the sector of the industry that they're in.
Yeah, I haven't figured that out yet either, Jackie. It's just something that's just I haven't figured it out. Don't know that I will. It's too late in the game for me to figure it out. So I'm going to just keep chugging along. It's been successful for this point. Hey, Jackie, we've got about 45 seconds left before we go to break. Please tell our listeners where they can find out more about KJ Media, and they can find out more about your great company up in the New York City area and the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm based in New York. All of our customers are national, and we travel around the Great 48 to see our clients and see our prospects. Our company, if you want to find me and get in touch with me, we are offering a 30-minute Accelerate Your Hiring session, a free diagnosis of what your company is doing great, what can be improved, and how, tidbits on how we could potentially help you, whether you work with our company or not. Our primary goal is to make the industry a better place for drivers across the board. You can find me at kjtransmedia.com.
Jackie McManus joining us on the line here on The Tim Ridley Show on SiriusXM.